It has been a while since I've done one of these, but Volume 9 is finally here. And this volume looks like it is going to be a heck of a fun one, but also pretty heavy at the same time. Regardless, it is going to be a wild ride, and I hope you'll join me on this journey. Before we get into it, I will say spoiler warning for those who have not seen Episode 1 of RWBY Volume 9. I won't be showing the episode or any clips from it in this video, just images of the episode and analyzing the events that take place. I'll leave a link in the description below so you guys can go to Crunchyroll, subscribe there, and support the series that we all love. Now, the episode starts off on a black screen, and the phrase that is spoken is a little bit foreboding. This is the story of a girl with a lot of problems. That could describe a number of people in this situation, but of course this is referring to Ruby Rose. She's going to be the focus of a lot of this volume because, well, she does have a lot of things on her shoulders and a lot of problems that she's going to have to deal with. So we open up seeing the fall as it happened at the end of Volume 8 from Ruby's perspective. Watching her teammates fall, watching her weapon fall into the void, and then watching Cinder throw her off of the crossroads. And then, as she's falling, Neo is attacking her, transforming into her friends, and at one point almost chokes her out. But Ruby's able to break Neo's grasp and eventually fall into the ever after, waking up on the unknown shore by herself, not knowing where she is or where she's going. And from this point on, for the next 4 or 5 minutes, we actually saw this part of the episode back in the summer, a few months back. We were given this spoiler, where Ruby is trying to make her way deeper into the island and is kind of in a spatial loop of sorts, where she's trying to walk and then ends up at the same place she was at before, and it just continues and continues until, well, she kind of gives in to despair, frustration, and sadness. She sits down next to a tree and begins to cry, and the weather responds. It went from a bright sunny day to, well, rainy as she's crying. And speaking of sunny, it's also important to note this world has 2 suns. I'm curious to know if that's going to be relevant later on, but definitely we are not in Kansas anymore. As Ruby is crying, though, she notices a little mouse, one that had been watching her walk back and forth repeatedly. This mouse is trying to pull a plant out of the ground. And, well, Ruby offers some help, picks the mouse up, and also pulls the plant out of the ground, which is a cheese potato? I made a video on this previously, as this mouse in particular is going to be pretty relevant for the rest of the volume. Ruby picks the mouse up, is glad to have helped it, and then asks out loud, "Now if only you could help me." And, well, the mouse responds, "Well, sure, I could try," which leads to some interactions as they try to get on equal footing of sorts. Ruby, of course, has never seen a talking mouse before, and the mouse has never seen a talking her before. So after a brief exchange, we come to understand that the mouse, whom Ruby names Little, hasn't actually been given a name or a purpose yet. And when Ruby introduces herself to Little as Ruby Rose, Little wonders if that is her purpose, if to Ruby Rose is her purpose. So obviously, purpose is going to be something very relevant to the overall volume. This was very clear from the trailers beforehand, from these first 4 minutes that were spoiled before, and again, number of videos already made on that, and I'm curious to know how that is going to play out, and what Little's purpose overall is going to end up being by the end of this volume. Eventually, they agree to help one another, and Little is going to take Ruby to their village. Maybe someone there has seen some of her friends. And speaking of Ruby's friends, we immediately cut over to Blake and Weiss. They've already met up in the Ever After. Seemingly, very soon after falling, they just met up with one another. And they are looking for Blake's weapon, Gamble Shroud. Weiss points out that Blake's weapon fell after Blake did, but before Weiss did, and since Weiss and Blake were able to find each other, they should be able to find Gamble Shroud, which does make me wonder if there was a pattern in which that they fell. Not just in the order that they fell, but that given a certain amount of time, like Yang fell here, then Ruby, then Blake, then Weiss, etc. But if that's not the case, and especially with this world being a nonsense world, granted, Weiss and Blake don't know it at this time, but it wouldn't exactly make sense that, oh, we fell in this exact order, so we should be able to find it, it should be close by, because, well, we'll see later on, but I have a feeling at least 2 of the characters that fell, Jean and Neo, aren't going to be that easy to find. unlike Gamble Shroud, which they did end up finding right away. Before that, though, Blake asked Weiss what happened after she fell, because Blake fell first, and, well, if Weiss fell, something must have gone wrong. And Weiss brushes this off. We, as the audience, know what happened, and obviously this is weighing heavily on Weiss. She decides to push those feelings aside and tells Blake, let's wait until we meet up with everyone else, and then I'll explain everything. Obviously hinting to Blake that things really didn't go that well. But then Weiss notices Gamble Shroud that is stuck in a pillar of thorns, it looks like, as the thorns and vines have seemingly spiraled around Gamble Shroud. So they each put in their best effort to try to free it. Blake's pulling on some of the thorns, Weiss is using her rapier as almost an axe to chop away at them. Not exactly how she was trained to use it in the first place, but she's able to cut away a couple of them, only for them to regrow. And as Blake is reaching for Gamble Shroud, she almost has it, and by the way, Weiss is being very expressive in this scene. The animation has clearly improved, and due to that, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this fantastical world of the Ever After is going to look with this new animation. But given that Weiss is so expressive, she's very happy cheering on Blake, and it is possible that she's just overacting right now, but considering just a moment ago she was pushing back her emotions, telling Blake that I'll wait until everyone has gathered together to tell you what happened, we know what she's dealing with inside. So the fact that she's this outwardly happy seems a bit out of place. And in that same vein, when they found Gamble Shroud, Weiss was also making jokes, because Blake had said, well, you know, it could be worse, and Weiss's response was, good news, I'm getting low on dust. Which then Blake replied, that wasn't an invitation, Weiss. Oh, sorry. Like, that exchange felt a little bit out of place. I don't really think that Weiss would be in the mood to be making jokes or being this overexpressive, but as I said, it would make sense if she's trying to overact, trying to lighten the mood, or lighten the situation, and take Blake's mind off of, well, what happened after I fell. So I can understand that. It did feel a little bit off-putting knowing everything that we saw in the finale of Volume 8. Regardless, Blake, as she's reaching for Gamble Shroud, isn't able to reach it. Or rather, something reaches out to her instead. The vines grab both Blake and Weiss, and they are captured, ensnared by them as their captors come forward. An army of mice had captured their prey, and apparently this was a trap that they set up. So the mice have some way of either controlling the vines or working the vines to their own advantage. They're small enough that the vines probably wouldn't be able to ensnare them, but how exactly was this a trap? They put an unknown object, likely they had no idea what Gamble Shroud was, and they put that in a swirl of vines, hoping that that would capture what exactly? Considering Little had never seen a human before, had no idea what or who RWBY was, then the rest of the mice would feel the exact same way. They would have no idea what Blake and Weiss were. So they probably weren't the targets, so who exactly were they targeting? My guess, from the trailers that we had seen, is it's the junk collector raccoon that stole Yang's arm. Maybe that's who they were trying to capture, but we don't exactly know at this point. Maybe we'll get a better idea later on. Pretty much immediately after Weiss and Blake are captured, though, RWBY and Little stumble upon them. And Little explains to the rest of his tribe what happened. And based on the way that this took place, the conversation that Little had explaining RWBY's heroism, that she was able to pull the cheese out of the ground all by herself, it really reminded me of, and this is possibly going to sound weird, let me know down in the comments if anyone else kind of made the connections here, the connection to Return of the Jedi, when C-3PO was explaining to all of the Ewoks about, well, Luke Skywalker's heroism, Han Solo, and essentially mediating everything, where then afterwards everyone became allies. The Ewoks, Han Solo, and the Rebellion, as well as, in this case, all of the mice and RWBY, Weiss, and Blake. It just, my mind immediately jumped to those connections with the way that Little was explaining things, and, you know, it's maybe a weird connection to make, but also maybe not, because the connections are definitely there. The mouse leader then apologizes to Blake for capturing them. It's just that, their kind is very wary around cats and snakes and cats, especially cats, because, well, cats seem to hunt them, very much implying that when the Cheshire Cat appears, some mice may go running. And so this exchange does kind of imply that the target that the mice were aiming for was actually Blake, or another cat of some sort. So maybe the Cheshire Cat, but again, maybe that'll be explained later on. Blake then asks if they've seen Yang, a girl with blonde hair. And again, this is where Weiss makes a joke, saying that their friend looks mean, but isn't. But can be if she wants to. And it does feel a little bit out of place, but I think it is meant to be a little bit forced. That Weiss is trying to forcibly lighten the mood and, take people's minds off of, well, what happened? After not really getting information from the rest of the mice, RWBY then exclaims that she was trying to get to higher ground, thinking that a better vantage point would let her, well, see their surroundings and see where exactly they are. At this point, Little offers to be their guide, because, well, Little has nothing else to do. They have no purpose, and so they can just do whatever they want, pretty much. And so they start on their journey, where Little immediately falls asleep. Adorable little mouse sleeping in RWBY's hood, but maybe not all that effective as a guide while asleep. They are making some progress, though. They've made it to a trail and are actually able to start venturing forth into the island without being turned around like RWBY was right at the beginning. And this is when RWBY now asks Weiss, if you fell, did anyone else? What happened afterwards? What happened in the crossroads? And Weiss says, giving a little bit of information, that I don't know if anyone else fell, but, let's wait until we find Yang and then we'll talk about it. So yet again, Blake and RWBY look at each other and realize that, well, things probably didn't go all that well. But they don't really have much time to dwell on it as they hear a roar in the distance. Well, not really that too far away, as they round a corner and they see the monster that we saw in the trailers, who is in fact the Jabberwock, or rather the Jabberwocker, as we see in the credits at the end of the episode. And it is credited at the end of the episode because the thing speaks. And it seems to speak in single-word sentences saying what it's doing. It starts off by saying searching, seeking, stalking. And then when it hears a sound, it says detecting, listening. When it turns to face Weiss, Blake, and RWBY, and at this point, Weiss and Blake have drawn their weapons upon seeing this monster that probably seems reminiscent to them of Grimm. Not exactly the same thing, but, I'm pretty sure the similarities to the God of Darkness are there for a reason. So yeah, the thing's probably going to be evil. But in this moment, Blake and Weiss have drawn their weapons, ready for battle. RWBY reached for hers, but realized that she doesn't have it. When the Jabberwocker does see Blake and Weiss, that they have their weapons drawn, the words it speaks are danger, death. And then as it attacks Blake, and Blake blocks with her weapon, it says pretty much directly to her, bite, rip, tear. So it is a very aggressive creature, to say the least. If it sees anything that it perceives as danger, it's going to attack. And at the beginning, when they first encountered it, it was searching for something. And as we see immediately after this, that something may have been Yang, because Yang shows up and continues attacking the Jabberwock. But the first thing Yang says when she appears is, "Hey, I'm not done with you yet," which implies that the Jabberwock ran away from her. And when we see Yang, she's out of breath and missing her arm, so she's obviously been through something in the Ever After before encountering the rest of her team. At this point, the Jabberwock is now more outnumbered. It's 3 against 1. It seemed pretty confident when it was just attacking Weiss and Blake, but now that Yang has joined the fray, it says, recede, retreat, wait, return. And then it does actually flee. Like the lemur from hell, it jumps up the cliff and runs away. So the Jabberwocker was definitely searching for something. I don't think it was Yang, considering the conversation that took place. Yang drove it off from somewhere or wanted information from it, was attacking it, and it ran away and was searching for something else. Maybe this is the knight. I did make a theory video earlier on that Jean is the nameless knight in the Jabberwocky poem, that ends up killing the Jabberwock with the Vorpal sword, because we know that Jean needs a new sword and everything like that, so feel free to watch that video linked up in the corner right here. And with this creature being confirmed to be the Jabberwock equivalent in RWBY, I think this theory might have some legs. But now that the monster has run, Team RWBY is back together again, though Yang is both happy and not really that happy to see the rest of her team. She's glad that they're okay, but was also really hoping that they would not end up there along with her. RWBY reassures her, though, well, if you thought we weren't coming after you, then you must have forgotten who raised us. Summer Rose, the hero that both of them strive to be like. Of course, Team RWBY was going to follow Yang one way or another, though depending on how things turned out in Volume 8, I don't know if they would have directly jumped off the crossroads to follow Yang into the void, assuming that they had been able to fend off Neo and Cinder. But regardless, all of them are there now. And one person in particular is incredibly happy to see Yang, as Blake tackle hugs her and they have a warm embrace. Now, I was really hoping that their overall reunion would be a little bit more drawn out, and especially that Blake and Yang's would be a little bit more emotional. Blake literally saw Yang fall, presumably to her death in front of her, so I would have liked to see the Bumblebee confirmation made immediate, right away, that, you know, don't leave me again, I can't live without you, or something like that, but I'm still assuming that's going to happen later on in the volume. Regardless, the close embrace that they did have is pretty self-explanatory. And then Yang asks Weiss, since you're all here, I guess it didn't go very well, huh? And then Weiss finally breaks. She starts breaking down, crying, and starts saying, you know, everything went so badly. And no one came from Vacuo, and Penny, she sacrificed herself, and this is the moment where we see RWBY fall unconscious. The stress that she must have been feeling, the weight that was already on her shoulders, having this added to it afterwards was probably just too much for her to bear, and she ended up passing out. When RWBY regains consciousness, Weiss, Blake, and Yang are discussing what to do and also who else may be there, in particular, Neo. And RWBY immediately confirms that Neo is there. She was the one who was attacking her when they were falling. But that's something that's probably going to be worried about in future episodes, as right now they're kind of concerned whether RWBY's okay, considering she passed out, and also concerned about where exactly they are. Yang brings up the thought that maybe they're dead, because that's certainly what she thought when she was there alone, that she had just died and gone to the afterlife. But that is shut down immediately by Blake saying, no, I don't think we're dead. In fact, I think we're in a fairy tale. I know it's going to sound strange, but that's where I think we are. And then we see the panoramic view of all the little hexagonal areas that seem to show different fairy tales. We got Candyland, we got the tree in the center, etc. And I wonder how many of these we are actually going to see throughout the series. Hopefully all of them, but we only have 9 more episodes, so I don't think we're going to be able to see all of them, maybe in little flashes here and there, and then this is where the episode ends. Well, the actual episode, as we then get into the Volume 9 opening, which is going to get its own video tomorrow, so make sure to subscribe and look forward to that. Normally in the past, what I've done with other volumes is film it immediately after filming this review. However, now that I live stream every Tuesday and Saturday, I'm going to be live streaming very soon after this review goes live at 7 p.m. tonight. So while you're watching this video, I might actually be live right now. So feel free to click the link in the description below and come over, check out the Twitch channel, and we can chat about the episode live. So overall, this episode was a good introduction to the Ever After. It did seem a little bit quick that Team RWBY found each other right away. We start off seeing RWBY's experience, and then Blake and Weiss immediately join up, and then Yang they find immediately after encountering the Jabberwocker, and, you know, it felt a little bit fast, but I understand why that was the case, because there is so much that we are going to have to explore with the Ever After. They probably wanted to get Team RWBY reunited, and then have them face the trials ahead. And let me tell you, based on the Volume 9 opening, those trials are going to be insane for one person in particular. RWBY's going to go through hell this volume. And again, I will address that in the video tomorrow. But now that the key players, that being Team RWBY, is all together, we have Little as their guide, who's going to be very relevant throughout Volume 9, as well as the Jabberwocker introduced. likely as the main foe that's going to be faced, along with the Red Queen / Queen of Hearts, not exactly sure yet, and possibly other characters that will be introduced later on. There are going to be a number of threats to Team RWBY, things that they're going to have to deal with, things that they're going to have to explore, and of course having to deal with their own shortcomings in the previous volumes, and, well, the weight of the burdens that they bear, that they brought with them into the Ever After. Things in this episode may not have been as emotional as I was expecting, but really, I can understand why that's the case, given that the entirety of Volume 8 had this dark, depressing tone over it. They wanted to start Volume 9 off on a bit of a lighter note, have Team RWBY reunited and introducing this new world as a fairy tale, and not really delve into a lot of the mental trauma that these characters have gone through. We will explore that later on, I'm sure, but for now I think they mostly want to focus on finding a way out of here, because they don't know where they are, they just encountered a monster, there are, priorities that do need to be worked out. But this trauma is certainly going to be addressed, especially with RWBY in particular, and my guess the rest of them as well, as I do believe they will be going through their own trials in this world that they will need to overcome to be able to escape. So let me know down in the comments below what you guys have thought about the opening episode of Volume 9. I think it is a great starting point, and from here it is only upwards, downwards, sideways, and probably in a spiral as well with the nonsense world that is the Ever After, considering, based on Wonderland. So we're gonna go in a number of different directions, some of them depressing, some of them probably gonna be quite fun in this volume. It's going to be an incredible ride, and I hope you'll all join me for that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like that. There's plenty more to come. I should also mention, if you're interested in a little series called No Game, No Life, make sure to check out my second channel, linked in the description below, the Daily Flugel, that is dedicated to covering everything in that series. And also, make sure to check out the Twitch channel as well, as we'll be talking about each episode live after it happens. Again, I stream every Tuesday and Saturday, so feel free to leave a follow there. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.